We've got children and women using those trains, destroying some relatives. They are disgusting, nasty fascists, and we need to cut their throats and get rid of them all. I just want to say thank you all. I'm going to leave it now. And free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Thank you. God bless you all.
Yes, there's nothing like calling for the slitting of people's throats before you turn to the crowd and say, good night, God bless. Of course, those two things really do go together. If perhaps you are in the Middle Ages or in a medieval age, you can call for death and say God bless. But that's from another time in our history. But perhaps in encouraging the Palestine movement, that's not so far away from us. Looking at this Ricky Jones thing and the lead up to this trial and the lead up to the other people who were put away, you know, the other people on the other side of the argument, they were told quite bluntly, look, you better plead guilty here. And this included Lucy Conley and all the rest. You better plead guilty here, because if you don't, we are going to give you maximum terms, and it won't just be 2 or 3 years. You might be going away for a while longer to that if you're going to end up wasting our time. So what you're going to do, you are going to plead guilty one by one in front of this judge while the Prime Minister talks on television about how tough the justice system is going to be on you in particular. Then you're going to be lectured by a judge on what a racist Nazi fascist you are. Then you're going to be sent away for 2 to 3 years. Those people still aren't out by and large. Some of them have died in prison, committed suicide, etc. Some of them have been in there who have families, who care for their families. Quite incredible when you look at it in terms of that. And meanwhile, of course, Ricky Jones, who actually was standing outside with a microphone, telling the crowd that we should all go up there and we should just slit those people's throats up there. That's what we all need to be doing here. He's the one that gets off because he is the Labour councillor. Now, there are many ways that you could look at this in a legal way. Now, I'm not a legally minded person. I look at things from a layman's perspective, and my sense of justice simply comes from rationality, logicality, a basis in sound philosophical principles, from first principles, and I just look at an event and I call it how I see it. I obviously don't get things right all of the time, because that's what being a human being is, but I'm not a legally minded person. I have no understanding, really, any deep understanding of that in any way. But I thought this clip I'm about to play for you here from Talk TV with Connor Tomlinson sums it up perfectly. So this clip's about 4 or 5 minutes long, but I think he sweeps through all of these points at breakneck pace, I might add, but I think he covers all of the points in detail and very well.
Ricky Jones is right, is he, Connor? Because he has the rights of free speech, even if it does get seen to be encouraging violent disorder.
Well, as your previous guest mentioned, Russell, even the most strong, robust standards of free speech protection in the United States, which is their First Amendment, doesn't protect libel, slander, or imminent incitement to violence. That's the standard by which the Brandenburg test determined whether or not, I think way back in the day, it was whether or not the Ku Klux Klan could march through black neighborhoods.
It's the fire in the theatre analogy, isn't it?
Yeah, very similar, yeah. But, of course, Ricky Jones should have met the standard for imminent incitement to violence because he was directing a large and even larger mob of stand-up to racism, socialist worker foot soldiers, gesturing at what was largely a phantom far-right presence in over 100 towns and cities on that given day. Remember, I think it was the 7th of August last year, where many didn't materialise, but there were some. I think it was in Walthamstow where he was standing. He slandered them as disgusting Nazi fascists because, lots of people would not hold those beliefs. And then he said we should cut all their throats and get rid of them all. That is directing them to lethal violence, and yet it took less than an hour for the jury, and we don't know how they were composed, what their ideological persuasion was, etc., but it took them less than an hour to reach a not guilty verdict, despite lots of people, and the Free Speech Union have spoken out about this, by the way. I spoke to Toby Young on a podcast last year. The fact that non-violent protesters and people posting on social media like Peter Lynch, Lucy Connolly, Wayne O'Rourke have been given bad state-funded legal advice and told, well, you'll be on remand for ages, like Ricky Jones, and even though Ricky Jones was given bail, if you plead not guilty, you'll not have a trial till next year, or if you plead guilty to incitement to racial hatred, even though you didn't commit this offence, you'll be home by Christmas. So they were sold a false bill of goods, and they're rotting in prison for over 2 years, whereas Ricky Jones gets to walk free. It's disgusting.
And hence the perception by most, I would suspect, in the public that they will see this as a form of two-tier justice. Again, we have to be careful in terms of the context. This is not a judge's verdict. This is a jury of 12 people and a verdict of those individuals, those members of the public. How much do you think the kind of sob story, really, from Ricky Jones' defence barrister, how much do we think that may have played to the jury in terms of his terrible upbringing, that he had to do PE in his underpants and he was bullied and racially abused and so on? I mean, frankly, Connor, it sounds like my school in Basildon that I went to every day. I haven't walked through a mob of people inciting violence by way of feigning a throat-cutting gesture. I haven't done that. So I'm not suggesting that it should be in some way a defence, but it seems that the jury may have bought that. But also, it seems, Connor, that they've bought the fact that he clearly said, or his defence counsel said, that he was kind of caught on the hop, that it was almost as if he was getting out of a car or walking out of a doorway, and he said it, you know, off the cuff. I mean, that's clearly not true. The man was in the middle of a mob, as you say, with a microphone. It was a preconceived, constructed, thought-through speech. So it was predetermined.
Yeah, I've never, in the heat of the moment, called for mass killings, nor, I know he said, I had ADHD and dyslexia growing up, so I just sort of say these things. I can't cite my mild Asperger's if I were to go on a sort of tirade about ethnic cleansing. I don't think the court of public opinion would probably find that to be a very compelling defence. As far as the sob-story being the thing that persuaded the jury, again, we don't know who the members of the jury were or what their ideological persuasion is, but whether it was a sob-story or whether it was solidarity with his socialist politics, I think it just shows that there is not a single tier of justice in this country, and instead now we are balkanized along, in some cases, ethnic and religious, but at the very least ideological lines. Justice is not being meted out blindly without fear or favour. Instead, certain people will get off scot-free, what is blatant incitement to violence, if they share the same ideological predilections as the people who have been told to cast judgment upon them. And by the way, I would also say that slandering these people as disgusting Nazi fascists is another form of incitement to violence, because in the context of the post-war politics in which we exist, calling someone a Nazi or a fascist, to any sensible person's mind who thinks those views are abhorrent, is like calling them an apostate in Pakistan. Or it's a bit like Henry II saying of Thomas Becket, won't someone rid me of that meddlesome priest?
Yeah, well,
and then a bunch of knights go out.
It certainly meets the test of denigrating someone's reputation, doesn't it?
Okay, so what should we make of all of that? Well, aside from that excellent explanation there, the obvious calls for two-tier justice do get thrown about. And, you know, when you look at everything, when you look at the other people, the Southport people who posted stuff on social media, particularly people like Lucy Connolly, they were told in no uncertain terms that they better plead guilty or there's a high chance that they're going to be going away for an extended period of time, possibly the maximum period of time. Of course, all the while you've got the Prime Minister saying that they're out to get you and they're going to make sure that you feel the full force of the law, which must have been really nice for those people. In addition, of course, to the judges calling everyone right-wing, fascist, Nazis, etc., etc. Now, all of that put into one ball of wax and everything that Mr. Tomlinson said there. The one thing weighing on the other side of that scale is the fact that it was a jury. And I'm a believer in law and order. And because I'm a believer in law and order, I'm a believer in doing jury service and, being judged by your peers. I myself, about a decade and a half ago, I've done some jury service, and it's really difficult to explain if you've never done it what it's like. But it is its own thing, and when you're there and you're sitting there, you do feel that weight of responsibility, and it's not something that anybody takes lightly. I discussed this with my fellow jurors, and they all felt the same way. They felt that responsibility, and so people should feel that responsibility. And we were all just normal people, just there to do our civic duty. But given the fact that there was a jury, can't really complain about it, and that's the obvious thing. Of course, Mr. Ricky Jones there, he was given advice not to plead guilty straight away, which he took, which is completely different from the rest of the people who got themselves into trouble last year. So you do get the feeling within all of this that the apparatus of state has been working behind the scenes as well. You get that feeling that there's been little machinations happening somewhere, and someone's been plotting and scheming and all of that. And just to bring this to a bit of a conclusion here, when I think of this whole Ricky Jones saga here that has been playing out in the media, and obviously he's going to drift away now and go back to his life because he's been found not guilty, regardless of what everyone thinks and feels about it. When I think of this whole thing, it lends itself to the current narrative with the Labour Party. Nothing the Labour Party does is right. They're getting every single thing wrong. Decision after decision, time after time, the Labour Party is getting it wrong. They're awful at politics, and that's the simplest way to put it. And sometimes when everything is going wrong in life and it's not going well and you keep making bad decisions, what can happen sometimes is that there's a weird little thing happen and it's out of your control and it's just something that goes wrong again, but it had nothing to do with you. And that's the feeling I get with this Ricky Jones thing in the government. This here that's happened, regardless of what's right and wrong, regardless of justice and the letter of the law, this is just simply going to feed into the narrative that this current government does not like its political opponents. It's quite happy to jail its political opponents, and it's quite happy to make sure behind the scenes that its political friends kind of get off. And this is just feeding in to this two-tier system that's feeding in to this public anger and this narrative. And, this is just, in essence, another nail in Labour's coffin. And really, it's not their fault. But that's life. When things keep going wrong, you know what's going to happen next. Something else is going to go wrong, and it's not even going to be your fault. But that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters in politics is the perception of the public. If the public believes things are fair and things are rocking along quite nicely, then they'll be quite happy to stand back and let you manage things. But that's not what we're feeling at the moment. Tensions are very high with regard to migration, and last year tensions have been very high since then with regard to Southport and putting people in jail for Facebook posts. Particularly that crunch point is Lucy Connolly. I feel she's the poster girl for everything that was wrong about how the government managed that. And now it turns out that not only was a man standing in public with a microphone telling a crowd to go and kill a bunch of people over there, but it's okay because he had a difficult childhood. But of course, Lucy Connolly's child died, and so she'd had a bit of a difficult time, but that wasn't taken into consideration, was it? In fact, she was told you got to plead guilty. And so this is the public's perception of what's going on. And more dangerous stuff for Labour. This is really dangerous for them now. The public is annoyed, and every single day there is a negative news item about them. And eventually it's going to topple them. Thanks very much for your time.